So, Chief Flowers.
Dorian.
Well, you'll always be Chief to me.
Yeah.
Actually, you'll probably always be Captain Flowers to me. But, yeah, for real. Pleasure to have you.
Thank you. Pleasure to be here.
Honored for you to be on here.
Likewise.
Yeah. Left New Hanover County.
2011.
Where did that journey take you?
To Hendersonville, North Carolina.
Hendersonville?
Hendersonville, yes. Yep.
I've often called it Henderson. Isn't that a place as well?
There's Henderson, North Carolina. Yes.
You were Hendersonville.
Hendersonville.
Got it.
Yep.
Okay.
Henderson, North Carolina, I believe, somewhere up north of Raleigh. I believe, somewhere in that area.
So you went from New Hanover as a captain. What I remember you as here in New Hanover was you were head over tactical operations. Mm-hmm. When I came in 2007, you were the dude that we all wanted to aspire to be. Or at least me. Excuse me. I can only speak for myself.
I concur. Aspirations.
Yeah, you were the knotsmith. You were the resident knotsmith. You were the guy who made us tie our knots in fire gloves behind our backs. You were that. Yeah, you were that guy. So you definitely were a intricate part in my upbringing into the New Hanover County system and into the whole rope world and technical rescue. So you ran the special operations side. You were always the tech guy for us. So when you left New Hanover County, what did you go to Hendersonville to be?
I was hired at Hendersonville as the fire chief there.
The fire chief, the head guy.
Yep.
My man.
Yep.
Cool. So what did that look like? How did that process kind of go in your brain? You wanted to leave New Hanover.
Well, it's not quite that easy. I really wasn't looking to leave. It's like anywhere else, and as you move up in the food chain and fire service, you start out as a firefighter, and you move up, and you have different ideas about how things should be run and things that should be done or not done, or better ways of doing things. And whenever I applied to the position, I had set some personal goals, and one of those personal goals was to get into the EFO program at the National Fire Academy. I had heard about it and known about it for a long time, but whenever I first applied, you only had to have an associate's degree, and at that time I had transitioned from I say the line, but as a operations captain to more into training and administration. So part of the acceptance into that program, you have to be kind of over a sphere of influence. So you don't necessarily have to have the title chief or chief in the title of your rank. Sometimes captains, if they're over like a training program where they're going to have a lot more influence over other people within the department, they can get into the program as well. And I didn't have that at that point. I had transitioned out of a station captain role and over the special operations and was in the administration. And so with that, I got denied. And then at that point in time, they changed the prerequisites to having a minimum of a bachelor's degree. And I was one of those guys that, formal education is just not my thing. I think it took me like 7 years to get my associate's degree. So 7 years to do a 2-year degree, something like that, because I start, stop, and everything else.
Sure.
And you guys know Chris Johnson, right?
Yeah.
I blame her. So she's and those of you that don't know, Chris Johnson is at that time, I don't know what she is now, but she was the senior admin assistant for New Hanover County Fire. And since I was down there around her all the time, we were worked together a lot, friends, that kind of stuff. And she had gone back to school, and that was a personal goal for her. And she pestered the crap out of me about going back to school, and I was like, nah, I'm just not doing it. And she kept on and on and on until finally, it's like, you get beat into submission.
Sure.
And so I was like, what's the worst can happen, right? Straight out of high school, I went to college for a couple years and floundered, didn't know what I wanted to be when I grew up. I was in the fire service at that time, but not professionally. And I didn't do real well. and didn't go when I was supposed to go, and it was my fault. But so I didn't have a real good experience with that, and she kept on beating me into submission, and I finally was like, what's the worst can happen? I just decided that it's not for me and quit, right? Well, those of you who know me, I'm not much of a quitter for the most part. So I did it, and what I quickly realized was that I was my own worst enemy. I'd made it out to be harder than it really was. So I got into it and realized it was just work. That's all it was. It wasn't something, I always was kind of intimidated by it, thinking that I wasn't smart enough or, whatever. And so I realized that it was just work. I think I graduated with a 3.8, something like that. And before I even finished that program, I'd already identified and signed up for a master's program. And the whole thing in the back of my mind was I wanted to do this EFO thing. And so I felt like, all right, well, the new bar that was raised to the bachelor's degree level, well, if I get a bachelor's degree, well, congratulations. I've just met the same thing everybody else in the pool is meeting, right?
Right.
So how do I separate myself from that? So I was like, I'm going to do the master's first and then try to get an EFO. And so, the drive was, like I said, I wasn't looking to leave New Hampshire County. Quite honestly, I wasn't expecting to get an offer. I was going through the process just for the experience, because I figured I needed to start getting some experience going through a chief level process. And man, it just timed out so that I was literally had just graduated from the bachelor's program, was getting ready or scheduled to start the master's program, and I went through that process, and it was funny because I remember the city administrator and the HR director, and they were sitting there talking. They had hired this company. It's a company that's very popular here in North Carolina for executive level recruitment processes, and they were like, you don't look like you're very stressed. I'm like, I'm not. If I needed this job, that'd be one thing. But I'm happy where I'm at. Obviously, in the fire service, we don't make a huge amount of money, but I was making enough to take and make ends meet with my wife's income, stuff like that. And so, it wasn't like I had to have that. I was literally going through it for the experience. And they called and offered me the job, which was one of those aw shit moments. You now you're in that situation. You presented with this. You got to make a decision, do something. And I was looking for any reason to take and say no. And so they made the initial offer, and I don't know what made me think of this, but if you ever do this, I would encourage you to do this, not because I'm smart, but because don't do as I do as I say do, that kind of thing. Learn from my mistakes. And luckily, I thought enough to say, hey, I want you to, before I agree to this, I want you to take and do some mock payroll and show me what it's going to look like take home. Because benefits are different, costs and stuff like that. And when they did that, my take home was less than it was as a captain at New Hampshire County. Now, it sounds like a lot, but it really wasn't a lot. It was just they paid for the employee benefit, but family you had to pay for, and that more than eat up what they were offering me above and beyond my annual salary at New Hampshire County. So it was real easy at that point in time to turn them down, and I did. And they said, look, we really, really want you. I don't know why, but that's what they said. And they said, if you just don't want the job, tell us and we'll move on. I'm like, well, I'm not going to say I don't want a job, but I can't go backwards in pay. It's not about money per se, but I can't go backwards. You know what I'm saying?
Can't hurt myself for this promotion.
Right,
yeah,
right.
Sure.
So for me, this job's never been about the money. My take on it is this. Don't get me wrong. We all want to make more money, myself included. But we agree to take a job for what is offered. So in my mind, that anything I make above and beyond that is to the good. So whether it's raises, bonuses, whatever that is, it's more than I started with. Now, keep in mind, what I'm not saying is I don't mean that, you stay stagnant and you stay at that amount for your entire career.
Sure.
There should be cost of living increases, performance, measures,
Sure.
things like that. Yep. And they need to keep up with the economy and the competition from other agencies, stuff like that. But in that aspect, generally speaking, it really wasn't about the money, and it certainly wasn't the title. Because if you guys know me, I don't care if you call me chief. I don't care if you call me captain, Dorian, whatever. That's never been something I'm hung up on. But for my personal goal of getting the EFO, I knew that having chief something in my title would help with that process. If I'd made battalion chief at New Hanover County, I could have gotten into the program that way. But there's obviously some personal decisions I made throughout my career that was just not something I was interested in pursuing at New Hanover County at the time. And so anyway, that's kind of a long story to get to where I was going, and that is that they came back and made a counteroffer, and that counteroffer, made it where I wasn't going backwards. They came back and made a counteroffer, and I accepted. And then I was scared to death. I did tell them, I said, I've got a lot of things going on here at New Hanover County. I can't just give them 2 weeks notice. I think I gave them like 2 months.
I was about to say it was a
something.
while.
Yeah,
I remember.
It was a while. I can't
Absolutely.
remember exactly. It was a while. I gave them a lot of notice. And part of that was because I was just, this is home. This is where I'm born and raised, and not necessarily New Hanover County Fire, because that was before New Hanover County Fire even was in existence. It's pretty much all I knew was this area, whether it was the City of Wilmington Fire Department when I worked there, or a volunteer department before that, things like that. So there was a lot going into it, and I should have had my head examined. Took a new job as a fire chief for a department that had some needs, and moved my family away from the only place I'd ever known as home, the only place our daughter had ever known as home. And at that point in time, I think my wife had been here for 20 years, so she pretty much counted as a transplant, and started a master's degree program on top of all that. So somehow I survived, and the family survived, and stayed there for about 4 years, and then opportunity opened up in South Carolina, and moved on.
We'll get into that as well.
I figured so.
I've got a quick question, if you will, and just kind of in a nutshell, summarize what the EFO program is, and then how that would benefit somebody to pursue that path. Like I said, just a little, a quick summary of it.
All right. So I really can't give you that summary without making this comment, because I was there, right? I was that person. So when I say a lot of these things, people, especially your listeners, are going to be out there going, yeah, he's one of those people, right? Well, no, really not. I've made my fair share of mistakes. I heard a battalion chief, I believe it was with Chicago Fire Department, made this statement, so I can't claim this statement. And I think it might have even been written in like Firehouse Magazine or something like that. But it was, we train for the known and we educate for the unknown. And it took a while for that really to sink in and for me to figure out what that meant. It really isn't about informal education. It's not really about the topic of the degree. It's the peripheral skill sets that you gain during that process that ultimately ends up benefiting you. Now, there are people out there that absolutely can do those things without a formal education. All right, I will not take anything away from that. But a lot of times that's from school of hard knocks, a lot of hard knocks, a lot of learning. And so the EFO program's kind of like that.
What does EFO stand for?
Executive Fire Officer. And it's the Executive Officer or Fire Officer program. They now have a Fire Officer program that's kind of similar to it. And so at that time, they've made some changes to it since when I was in it. But it was a 4-year program, and it's graduate level work. And you go to the campus, or at least under the previous format, You go to the campus. You go there. You're there for 2 weeks straight, taking your classes Monday through Friday.
National Fire Academy
in Emmitsburg, Maryland. It's on the campus of Emergency Management Institute, so EMI, all that's there too. And you're there for 2 weeks. You go through whatever that course is for that year, and then after that, you had 6 months to develop an applied research project, an API, and basically you had to write a paper. But you had to do some kind of study that would evaluate something in your own department, or would help evaluate an issue within the fire service. And they use a term called adaptive challenge. So an adaptive challenge is one of those things where, the whatever you think is the fix is a moving target. So a lot of times, and this is a frustrating part for the fire service, because those of us as firefighters, we're sitting there watching somebody, especially, a lot of times it's a fire chief, taking and saying, well, we're going to do X, Y, Z to fix whatever this problem is, and then it fails miserably. And you're like, yeah, I told you that wouldn't work. All right, well, yeah, but was your idea any better? Would your idea work better? It might not. But what it is that, that adaptive challenge is not a black and white fix for something, right? So that's really the whole premise behind this program, is to get you to think analytically, think through problems, and evaluate from that aspect, and then try to develop a process to fix something, and to realize that you ain't going to fix everything right out the gate. You're not going to get it right every time. But to not just take and fall down and not get back up. Try something else. If that didn't work, do something else. And that's really what that program is about. But it's a 4-year commitment. I will tell you without a doubt, though, the biggest benefit to that is something that that probably doesn't make a lot of sense to some people, but is you develop your own personal network. And when you're sitting in this classes, literally, like I said, you don't have to be the chief, right? You could be a captain over something, training or whatever. So you got a different group of people and peers in this class, and what you thought was unique problems to your department, you find out very quickly that they're not unique. That
share a lot of the same things.
Share a lot of the same problems. And you develop this network of people, friends, and I've got probably 10 or 15 throughout the 4 years that literally, if they said, hey, I really need your help right now, I need you here, I would drop what I was doing and run.
That's one of my favorite things about the fire service.
Yeah, that networking. And literally, if you have a problem that comes up, somebody else has probably had it, and they may have had a different way of approaching it, or some ideas on how to deal with it or cope with it or whatever. So yeah, it's a really good program. But all that being said, when I started back, and I still blame Chris Johnson for this. When I started back, it was 4 years. I say 4 years. It wasn't 4 years. 2.5 years. Finishing my bachelor's degree. Then I went into the master's. That was 2.5 years. So we're now 4.5, 5 years. I'm trying to do math. And then you add 4 years on top of that. So you're talking 8,
almost a decade,
9 years of going back to school in some form or fashion, and 6 of that's at a graduate level. And then I was dumb enough to take and sign on to be a fire chief. What the hell was I thinking?
Yeah.
Anyway, so yeah.
You referenced something talking about the moving target.
Mm-hmm.
As far as the fix is always a moving target.
Yeah.
That's interesting to me. Lately I've been trying to solve a lot of problems,
mm-hmm.
and sometimes it feels like
Yep.
you got your sights on your solution,
mm-hmm.
and when you said it's a moving target, it kind of rang in my head like.
It really is, and that by definition, and I encourage you to look that up. Adaptive challenge. There's some books out there. I don't remember the name of the book, but I can get it for you. And it's really like that's the best way to describe it. It's really a moving target. You don't know what the fix is. It's not something that you're typically going to fix with a with a policy or procedure.
It's not a hammer and a nail type situation.
Right.
Sure. Talk to me about your experience in Hendersonville as new fire chief.
Yeah.
What did that department look like when Dorian came in, and then what did it look like when Chief Flowers left?
Well, they had some internal issues there, and I mean I'm not throwing darts or anything like that. They had some internal issues and some previous things that people just didn't get along. But they also had some very instilled traditions and things that just how things have always been done and stuff like that. And some of those things were things that they it's just how they've always done things. So they didn't realize that they were necessarily wrong, or what the risks were. And so as you move up the food chain, so to speak, in the fire service, your perspective starts to change. From being a tailboard firefighter to being a company boss to a shift boss on up, and you if you're, in my opinion, this is Dorian's opinion, if you're doing it right, you can't lose sight of your personnel. You have to remember where you were, where you came from, but you also have to balance that with the other side, which I really take and call risk mitigation. So there's risk mitigation on both sides. So there's, I don't want any of my staff to come to work and then get hurt or God forbid die while they're working. Right? I don't want them to die, period. But you know what I'm saying? I don't want them to come to work and get hurt. So there's risk mitigation that you do with that, but then there's also risk mitigation you do on the other side. That's, it helps protect the city or the county or whoever the hiring group is.
Your customers.
Right, and the customers. So you really have to try to find that balance, and you're really walking a line. And so there's a lot of different players that's involved in that, whether it is your customers, whether that's your staff or your elected officials or your administrators, all that stuff. So you really have to try to find that balance in there. And so New Hanover County, we had a lot of stuff going on at the time whenever I left. I can't speak for it now. I've been gone for close to 10 years, something like that. But at the time we had a lot going on, right? So one of the benefits that I had, I didn't look at it as a benefit back then. I looked at it as a curse. But I was involved in a lot of different things, and I don't want to paint the picture that New Hanover County wasn't in New Hanover County without me. That's not what I'm saying. But
I'll say it.
Well,
your humility is refreshing.
Well, thank you, but still, the thing is that I had my hands in a lot of different things, and I don't know that that's necessarily because nobody else could do it. I think it was because nobody else wanted to do it, or whatever. So that was part of that whole thing about when I left. I gave them 2 months, 3 months, whatever it was. I don't remember what it was. It was an exorbitant amount of time that I gave them because my feeling was that I had so much things that I had been tasked with that I needed to try to teach other people how to do that.
Yeah, to groom somebody in order
right,
to,
Sure. And to say, okay, well, poof, you're it, and in a week and a half, I got to teach you how to take and keep up a website, which is one of those things I was doing whenever I left from here, of all things. So it's I brought a lot of varied experience. So really, what I usually say is, a jack of all trade and master of none.
Right.
So it's like people even now that I work with, they're like, how do you know that? And it's just, there's a lot of different reasons that I know what I know, but I'm not a master of any of it. I know about this much of any of that stuff, right? There are certainly people out there a lot smarter than me, but so I went there and had to start trying to re-educate, reorganize, plan for the future. As I walked in the door, we had a lot of contracts that we had with neighboring departments that were contracts to provide service, and I had to build a fire station. They had already bought the land, and the land was 11 and a half acres of land, had think it was a 36,000 square foot building on it, and they wanted to take and see if they could retrofit that into a fire station or if they needed to build new, and we had to evaluate the pluses and minuses of all that. And then it come out, obviously, I mean, it really wasn't, I mean, I kind of knew it going into it, but that was because of the experience here, helping design the fire stations that we built while I was here, not by myself, but just helping with that process. I knew that it was probably going to be cheaper to build new than what they were attempting to do. And so that's what it came out to be. And so we built the new fire station. But, you know, when they decided to build a new fire station, they said, well, wait a minute, what are we going to do about this, you know, perfectly good 36,000 square foot building over here and the rest of the property? So I became project manager for not only a fire station, but upfit of a 36,000 square foot storage building. The 11.5 acre total land, which means that, you know, if you've got a low area, you're going to have to figure out how to get the stuff that goes downhill, uphill. And so, yeah, that was interesting. And all the whole time trying to run a fire department and get people to decentralize the decision-making process. So, you know, I am very much not the type of person that feels like the fire chief needs to be making all the decisions. If I have to make a decision, I'll make a decision. It may not be that, you know, you like it. Heck, I might not like it. You know what I'm saying? It just is what it is. If I had to make a decision, I can make a decision. I just don't know if it's going to be the best one. So, you know, getting them out of that mindset, because when I walked in, pretty much the fire chief made all the decisions. Everything that was done in the corner office, so to speak. And I am very much probably better at taking and delegating things. And when I say delegate, I don't mean like delegate, try to get out of something. What I mean is delegate and give somebody the room to learn, which means they can also fail, right? Because failure is not necessarily a bad thing, right?
Absolutely.
We don't want to fail when somebody's life is in the line.
Sure.
But being so afraid to fail that you are afraid to make a decision is not a good thing either. And so, you know, there was a learning curve with that. And then during that period of time, remember I told you the whole move, and should have had my head examined for that. You know, I did not make the decision to move and take that position without discussing quite a bit with our daughter and my wife. And what I found out quickly was that, you know, we didn't communicate, which I think is probably the area that we as human beings fail the most in our day-to-day lives, whether it's professional or personal, is communication or lack thereof. And so I did not realize that my wife was extremely unhappy where we were at, and that took a toll. And so we eventually took and moved to Greer, South Carolina. And
so communication finally happened.
Yeah. It was one of those forced communications.
Right. You said you would delegate to guys and then give them a little bit of room,
Mm-hmm.
you know, like to succeed or fail or
Mm-hmm.
just move. That leadership style is not very common.
A lot of times that leadership style is not common for different reasons.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes that's ego. And yeah, I'm just going to say it. The fire service is full of ego. All right. And our ego doesn't allow us to fail, and doesn't allow us to be perceived as failures. It can be ego. It can be comfort level. You know, there's a lot of different things that go into that, and I'm just comfortable with taking and giving some people a little bit of leeway, because my thought process is this. You know, we have company officers, we have, you know, shift personnel, stuff like, or shift supervisors, battalion chiefs.
Mm-hmm.
You know, we also have a very robust automatic aid system, and so it's nothing for us to put 25, 28 people on a first alarm assignment, and of course the apparatus to get them there. And so if if we have done what we should do to prepare our company officers and our battalion chiefs, things like that, then the definition of chief, right? Chaos chief.
Yeah.
Arrived on scene,
Yeah.
right? So there's no reason for me to take and go to every call. I mean, hell, we have structure fires I don't go to, right? I'll listen. I'll take and sometimes I'll listen, sometimes I don't. But I might look at CAD notes just because I'm interested. But I can't tell you the last time that I personally ran a scene. Okay, I don't have to. I don't need to. We've got very competent company officers. We've got very competent battalion chiefs, and I would put them up against anybody. We run pretty fair amount of fire. We typically get it out quick. Knock on wood. I don't want to jinx the guys that are on shift tonight or anything, but
Right.
But they just do a really, really good job of getting in there, getting the fire out.
They're aggressive.
They are, and but when I say aggressive, they're aggressive but safe.
Sure.
And people can say what they want to about like the blue card stuff like that. We do that, and in fact, we are able to do our own training in house. We have 3 blue card instructors. We have the computers and all the stuff through blue card to be able to do that in house. We were just doing it the last couple of days, and so it's what it's done for us is taking our company officers and giving them the basic knowledge of getting there and starting to lay the groundwork, because we send so much apparatus and so many people there. If you don't start it at that company officer level, you're going to be playing catch up if you're thinking about a battalion chief getting there. You know what I'm saying? And we don't do that. I mean, there's all these great electronic versions of accountability and everything else. We literally use the equivalent of the passport system. But any kind of high risk incident, not just structure fires, but high risk incident, we send a minimum of 2 battalion chiefs. First arriving battalion chief, regardless of whose department they're with, will get there and take the transition from the company officer if they started the process, and they'll take over from there and let the company officer be reassigned to what they're doing with their company. And then that battalion chief's running the scene, the other battalion chief accountability and safety. So when those companies are arriving, their company officer are bringing up the passport tags. It's very simple. The passport tags, there's 2 sets of them on each truck. They're on the left side in the door, left side of each apparatus or staff vehicle. And you have everybody's on there, and the one that's second under there tells you who the officer is or who the engineer is and that kind of stuff. All of our radios are signed IDs. We have radios for each riding position. And so through that, through the CAD system, our MDTs, when they log on in the morning, they shift change. They log in, and when they log in on that company, they actually put the people's names on there. So as a incident commander, you see all this apparatus coming, but you also literally can look and see, okay, well, they're riding with 3 today. Hell, they might be riding with 2, but whatever it is, you can see what you got coming resource-wise. So again, we empower our company officers to make those decisions. And if I felt like I had to take and be right there over top of you, monitoring every move you make, then I have to question why I have you in that role, or why do I have that role even exist if I'm going to be the one doing the work or telling you step by step how to do it. You might do something a different way than I would do it, but that's not necessarily bad. If the end result is done and it's done in a safe and effective manner, then why does it matter if it's my way, your way, his way, whatever? It's kind of like the when the technical rescue stuff. You kind of gave me a little bit of grief about the ropes and knots and stuff, but there's a lot of those knots. There's a lot of different ways to tie them. Okay, and I might take and teach one way, and that might say click with 80% of the class, but the other 20% of the class can't get it. Mm-hmm. It doesn't click for them, right? Or hell, it might be a lefty. I'm a righty, right?
Sure.
You start tying something with the left hand, and I'm looking at you like you. Yeah, exactly. I'm looking at you like you crazy. And you got 3 eyes. But the thing about it is, what I did with that is I would take and look for different ways to tie that same knot, so that whenever I was teaching that, if I had people in the class that didn't get it, then I would take and get those people that did, get them off to the side, let them keep practice what you know, right? Mm-hmm. And then I would get off to the side with the others and start working with them. And, the next version might get, another 10, 15% of them. Then I might have 5%. I might have to go do something else. And so, it's kind of like this. There's a lot of different ways to do what we do. Unfortunately, with the fire service, another thing we do is we get, especially in a regionalized area, you have 1 or 2 instructors that teach certain things, but they only teach one way. And then what happens is all the students that go through that only know that one way. So then if they see somebody else doing it, they think they're wrong. Okay, that may or may not be the case. You know what I'm saying? But sometimes we're too full of ourselves, ego, to be open-minded enough to realize there's maybe more than one way to do something right and effectively. An example, when I was at New Hampshire County, we had an instructor that was very well known and I respected, and we were doing a class at the old Wilmington Training Tower, and had one of our firefighters come running up to me and tell me, this instructor over here doesn't know what the heck they're doing. I'm like, what?
That's a hell of a thing to say. Yeah.
What are you talking about? And what it really boiled down to was, when you tie a tagline on the foot of a Stokes basket, right, for a vertical lower.
I know where this story's going.
Yeah, so they literally was a tagline on the end of a Stokes basket, and it was a bowling on a bite versus a figure 8 on a bite. All right. And so literally this person had only learned the figure 8. Yeah. All right. So they automatically said that the bowling wasn't right. And I'm like, what? I was like, wait a minute, hold on. So what's the purpose of this? What's the purpose of what you're doing here? You want a open fixed loop that doesn't cinch down, so that when you need to pull it, you can pull it and it'll readjust for angles and stuff like that, right? Does a bowline do that? It does, right? A bowline is an accepted rescue knot if it's tied properly. So it's a tool in your toolbox. You decide which tool. It's no different than a box end wrench to a socket, right? If you can get over the head of the nut, you can use either one, right?
Sure.
Yeah. I would say that your style, your leadership style, the way you teach somebody how to do something, they teach the skill, but they also teach it the way you taught it. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So that maybe that person was in more of a strict environment when they learned their skill.
Right, and that's very possible. And again, that can be intentional or unintentional too. So I don't want to throw darts at other instructors because some instructors just like, no, you do this way and that's it. Okay. Right. There's various reasons that they do that as well. But it could be that it's the only way that instructor knows how to do something, mm-hmm. right? Which is bad. But it could be just that they just don't know or they're not comfortable. Because just because you're an instructor don't mean you know everything, right? So there might be other ways that somebody else has been exposed to. So, there's a lot of times that people were, the students in the class were teaching me something I hadn't seen before. But instead of saying, I'm not going to know that, I'm going to watch. And if you end up with the same knot that I'm tying, then show me how you did it, because I don't know how you did it. Right.
Yeah. Myself and Steve talk about that a lot, because we do a lot of live burns together. Mm-hmm. It's probably the only thing we probably teach together.
Right.
Do together. As far as that goes. But we talk all the time about every single live burner we do. We always learn something new, and we're supposed to be the subject matter experts here. Mm-hmm. Everybody's looking at us, but our students and these fire departments that we're we're helping with this process, we learn something from them all the time.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
it's
if you don't, it's time to hang it up.
it's shame on you.
Well, yeah, it's time for you to hang it up. If you think you've learned everything, then it's time for you to hang it up.
I think you may be the first person I ever heard say that in the fire service. If you,
I mean,
if you think you know it all, then you need to quit.
Yeah, you need to quit because you're a danger to yourself and you're a danger to other people.
Sure.
I mean, absolutely. And I mean, I can't tell you how many times I've taken fire behavior since I took it the first time.
Sure.
And let's talk about that for a second. So, what is this thing in the fire service that, we go out and we get our certificate and we feel like that's all we got to do, right?
Sure.
Okay, well, congratulations, you met a minimum standard. Now what are you going to do with it? Okay? Yeah. I mean, literally, you did the bare necessity to earn a certificate that says you're now qualified as a firefighter, and that's it.
Learning stops.
It's a minimum standard. And not only does it stop, but we feel like it's beneath us. Right? We feel like it's beneath us. And here's the thing. I mean, let's say that the class, whatever it is, let's say ladders hasn't changed, the actual ISTA or whatever hasn't changed in 20 years. Okay, fine, so be it. But if you're teaching and you're teaching and he's teaching, you might have different ways of doing something, and I might take and learn something different, even though I've taken it 20 years ago. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And again, I think it's ego, and I think it's being afraid of failure, or being afraid of saying, I do kind of remember going through that in rookie school, but I don't remember that, and I'm not going to admit it to you, and I'm not going to tell you either. So I'm going to sit back over here and act like I know everything. I really don't. And so I'm completely what happens is you get left behind by those who are more aggressive with knowledge and education and learning, and that kind of plays back into what we talked earlier about the formal education thing. And it's really, it takes all those things. It's not just formal education, and it's not just a piece of paper or certification either. Okay, you should take and always look for opportunities to learn. I really believe that, because your knowledge, i.e., education, knowledge, whatever you have upstairs, is yours, and nobody can take it away from you. They can come and take your car if you don't pay your car payment. They can take your house. They can do all those kind of things. They can take your job, But if you know something, okay, especially if you know something that you can use to make a living, they can't take that away from you. Mm-hmm. You see what I'm saying?
Sure.
So I've been accused more than once of taking and watching over somebody like maybe a plumber's shoulder or something like that, and like, look, I ain't trying to get in your business, but I'm just watching what you're doing.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, absolutely.
I don't want to do your job. All right. I think I truly believe there's special people to do every job out there. Like my wife, I wouldn't be a nurse for anything in the world. All right. We as firefighters, we go out there and we might see somebody worse, 10, 15, 20, 30 minutes of their life, this medical emergency or accident or whatever. And what do? We pack them back in an ambulance, and the ambulance takes them to the hospital, right?
Yeah.
We
Get
might
rid
not
of them fast.
Yeah, right. We might not even know that their husband, a father, a mother, daughter, sibling, whatever. We may not know anything about them like that, right? But when they get in the hospital, and if they live, right, and they're in the hospiel, those people taking care of them, you can't help but learn the family dynamics, right, and find and that stuff about it. And I don't want that to sound like we're heartless, because it's not that. We wouldn't be doing the job if we're heartless. But it's easier for us to take and compartmentalize the things that we get exposed to and things we see, that we don't know all those other parts and pieces. We don't know their name typically. You know what I'm saying?
Sure.
And it's a little easier for us to compartmentalize that. And of course, that's not always good either. We're our own worst enemy when it comes to that too. Talking about mental health and stuff. Mm-hmm. I think there's special people for every job out there.
Sure.
I don't know how I ended up in the fire service, but I did. Right.
It seems to be a trend in the fire service that when a company officer climbs the chain that you were talking about, when they go to the next step, whether it be battalion chief level, administration, whatever, most of the time, I would say I see it on the battalion chief level. They're kind of that aggressive nature kind of goes to the wayside, and they start. You hit on it, I believe, a little bit earlier when you started talking about risk management. Mm-hmm. What do you think? What is your opinion on what's that switch that gets flipped where they stop? Where I see it where a guy acting as a company officer will take a completely different stance than when he's wearing a different hat,
right?
Or when he's promoted and becomes something different. They almost come to this fork in the road where as a company officer, we're going to be aggressive. We're going to do whatever we need to do. Bar somebody holding our belt loops. We're going to do the darn thing.
Right.
And then, they get to this fork when the bugles cross or whatever it may be, whatever promotion they may take, and they start kind of backing off from that, where they don't. It's almost like the aggressive attitude and the aggressive nature, or the ability to let the people in those positions do what they would do then. Mm-hmm. It kind of goes to the wayside. What is your opinion on that?
I think that really kind of falls in line with the whole adaptive challenge concept. I think it's different for different people.
Sure, and I'm not putting the blanket on everybody. It's obviously not everybody.
Right. No, and I think it also is different for different organizations. So, one of the hardest things you're ever going to do in your career, other than try to attempt to communicate, is change culture. All right, that is not an easy thing to do, and so. When somebody moves up, as they move up and their responsibilities change, that forces them to look at things from a different perspective, whether they like it or not. And so, let's talk about firefighters. You go in the door of the firefighter and all you want to do is fight fire, right? I mean, other than possibly your own personal safety, maybe, because, I was one of those, I just did what I felt like needed to be done, didn't think anything else, right? You don't really think a lot about the possible repercussions or outcomes of decisions you make or don't make. As you move up, you get that company level. I mean, you still kind of, at that level of the food chain, you're really kind of dealing with just a core group of people that you spend majority of your time with, unless they're riding off one day or whatever. You kind of each kind of know each other very intimately. It's kind of that thought process of we are so in tune with each other. I know that we get on scene of this type of incident. I know Matt's going to do X, Y, Z. I know Steve's going to do X, Y, Z. Jeremy's going to do such and such, and I don't have to think about it. I don't have to tell them, right? I trust that they're going to do it because I know they're going to do it without fail. As you move up, you get into that, say, battalion chief role. All right, maybe you get transferred to a whole different shift when you make that position. All right, these are not people you work with; they're on a different shift, right? So your comfort level is going to be different. At the same time that's happening, you're being told about everybody above your head, what their expectations are, right? And here's the deal, guys. We all have a boss, right? And you have a decision to make. So just like my position as a fire chief, we recently, about 6 months ago, got a new city administrator. So the administrator I work for now is not the one that hired me. He comes in, he has a different outlook on things, different way of approaching stuff. Different expectations, and he comes out and tells me, "Okay, I want to do X, Y, Z." Well, I've got a decision to make. Either I'm going to do that, or I'm going to convince him why we shouldn't do that, or ultimately that's going to become the downturn in my career. Because I work for this person. This is my boss, right? Now, I'm not sitting telling you that, if he comes and tells me to do something I completely disagree with and or that is unethical or illegal, that I'm going to do it. I'm not. Okay, because there is a certain thing called morals, right? But there is a point in time that you get high enough in that food chain that you have to figure out what you're willing to die on the sword for and what you're willing to fight for. And then it becomes a mitigation process, right? You start saying, okay, prioritize this, this, and this. Let's try to fight this battle. This over here, yeah, I don't really agree with this, but this doesn't really at the end of the day, it's not going to take and hurt anybody. It's not going to kill anybody. It just might be, a pain in the ass, right? So as you move up that food chain, your perspectives are going to change. They have to, because now instead of you being, really in charge of your own safety, personal safety, the safety of your company, you become responsible for the safety of an entire shift or possibly an entire division, okay? And then eventually an entire department, right? And so everything you do as you move up and you try to evaluate those different positions, different perspectives, is finding your comfort level. And that comfort level is, again, that willingness of hazard mitigation. How much are you willing to let somebody, go out there and possibly fail? I'm not knowingly going to let one of my people fail and get somebody hurt.
Sure.
Right?
Sure.
And sometimes that's a easy battle to win. Sometimes it's not. And all this really boils down to communication. And so I'm going to lead into that. We do not, we think we communicate, but here's the deal. The intended message is not always what's received, right? So let's give an example. I could take and say something to you, and I think that I'm getting my message across to you clearly. But let's just say that something I do, something I say, let's say it's a new policy, all right? And say you're a company officer and I'm a battalion chief and I'm giving you a new directive, new policy, whatever. And it just completely pisses you off, right?
There's a possibility of that.
There's a good possibility, right? And then so I'm sitting here communicating that to you, and just now you kind of smiled at me because you knew that it was kind of tongue in cheek, right? And I'm thinking I'm getting the visual indicators that you understand what I'm saying, and you're not taking too big of an issue about it because you just kind of smiled at me, right? And then I walk away from that conversation thinking that, okay, message delivered. There wasn't any major issues because you didn't take and bring them up, right? And then I turn my back and walk away, and you go talk to Steve, and then all of a sudden I am the worst person who has ever walked the face of the earth. I don't know what I'm doing. I forgot where I came from. I'm an asshole, right? Whereas if you had just simply said, well, wait a minute, Chief, have you thought about this from this perspective? And how this might come across, how this, whatever. Now let's talk about personally. Let's say I say something that just rubs you the wrong way, pisses you off, hurt your feelings. 9 times out of 10, a person ain't going to say, wait a minute, hold on, this is what I just heard you say. What you just said really rubbed me the wrong way, hurt my feelings, pissed me off, right? We're not going to do that. Why? Because that's not an easy conversation to have with somebody, right?
No, the moment you get mad, you turn off.
Right,
And then,
right. Yeah. So again, we had that conversation, personal conversation, and this holds true in your own personal relationships, wife, girlfriend, boyfriend, whatever. And you walk away from that conversation thinking you delivered your message, right? You communicated, when in fact you really didn't. You pissed that person off, hurt their feelings, whatever, and or they didn't get the message. Here's the deal. You might have intended to hurt their feelings. You may have intended to piss them off, but you also may have not. And simply because there wasn't that really effective communication there, I walk away thinking everything's fine. You walk away pissed off, right? Whereas if you had simply said, hey, look, this is what I just heard you say, and this is how I took it. Did you mean it that way? Maybe I didn't. Okay, so then I say, whoa, wait a minute. No, that ain't what I meant. Let's try to work through this and figure out a different way for me to communicate this so you understand what I'm trying to say. Or simply I say, well, yeah, That's exactly what I meant. At that point in time, you have a right to walk away pissed off, right?
Sure.
But until then, you're assuming that that was my intent, okay? Again, the intended message is not always what's delivered, and we fail miserably in communication in our day-to-day life, our professional life, personal life. We do. We think we're communicating when we're really not. And so a lot of these things could easily be addressed by effective communication. But what happens is, it's like, okay, well, that guy over there in that corner office, i.e. the fire chief, forgot where he come from. Hell, I don't even know if he ever fought fire, right? And he don't know what he's talking about. And, I don't know why we have to do X, Y, Z. It's just ridiculous, da-da-da-da. Whereas if that individual would simply sit down and said, look, I understand that this appears to be busy work, but here's what we're doing. Here's why we're doing it, okay? Now, I'm the type that I'm not going to say, okay, and we're going to do it this way step by step. I'm going to say, this is the intended outcome. This is what we're doing, why we're doing it, right? Do you have a better idea? Can we do something as an organization to make that better, more effective? But at the end goal is, this is what we're trying to accomplish, and here's why we're trying to accomplish it.
Yeah, Steve talks about this a lot. I think a good intro to having conversation when it's something like that, where it could be perceived from the other party as something controversial, is explaining your motives going into the conversation, starting it that way. Expressing what it is, your motives in behind what you're saying, and then say what you need to say.
Right.
So if you have the ability to express your ideas prior to you saying them, it kind of only leaves it as one way to be heard.
Right.
If that's a thing.
Right.
I mean, obviously, as an effective leader, the idea would be to portray your message to where it can only be heard in one way.
Right, but you also have to take into account that no matter how much you try to do that, that's not going to happen 100%. And you have to be prepared, and you have to take and realize that, just because somebody's, smiling at you doesn't mean they understood or they agree with what you just said.
Well, we all got an inner asshole inside of us.
Right. And a lot of it also comes across with how you deliver the message, because
delivery is key.
Yeah. So, I mean, we can agree to disagree, and, I may be mad at you, but you can ask anybody I've ever worked with. All right. If I was mad, I mean, you might know I'm mad, but, I'm going to talk to you just like I'm talking to you right now. I'm not going to scream, get red faced, raise my voice at you, because you do that, the listening stops, right? And then it's adversarial. And
sure,
that's not going to accomplish anything. And at the end of the day, if you're a supervisor, you have a certain amount of well, I understand we disagree on this, but we are going to have to do X, Y, Z. Okay, you do have that, but that should be the last thing out of your toolbox, right? I don't want someone to do something simply because I have a rank. I want them to do something because there's a mutual level of respect, and that there's a full understanding of why we're doing it. Because I'm going to tell you right now, I don't believe in busy work, right? But there's enough stuff that we should be doing that we shouldn't be looking for busy work, right?
Sure.
But, the other side of that is that, and I can say that from personal experience, i.e. me, a lot of times we get into this routine that we come to work at the fire department for a break from our regular work, whatever that is, right? So
I look at it as a break from kids.
Yeah, or a break from kids, break from wife.
I can't lie.
Nah. But no, I mean, what happens is though is sometimes that turns into everything besides literally doing the process of getting on the truck and going to a fire becomes busy work. You know what I'm saying?
Sure.
So we work sometimes harder trying to get out of doing work than if we had just done it in the first place, right? So sometimes we're our own worst enemy with that.
That's a true thing for sure.
Yeah, I mean, and so with that, we were talking about earlier at dinner, talking about pre-plans. Here's the deal. Yeah, there's ISO and all that stuff, and pre-plans play a role in that and all that. But to me, that's not the value in pre-plans. Pre-plans to me is the value to the firefighters, but it has to be accurate. It has to be readily available. It can't be sitting in a freaking 3-ring binder back at the damn fire station, right? And it needs to be in a way that you can access it on the way to the call. Okay? And it's not a hard process. So if that's a computer or whatever that is, it has to be readily available. But that information is there for the firefighter. It's a chief sitting back at the office, it ain't going to make no difference, right? It's for the firefighter. And the more they can know about what they're going into, the better off they are. An example would be, most of the time, military snipers don't go and deploy and sit up on a ridgetop and pick off somebody in 10 minutes. Although that sounds really cool, that's not how it typically works.
I'd like to take the 10-minute one.
Yeah. So if you really listen to some of these snipers, they'll tell you that typically the best snipers are the one actually sitting up there on the scope. Okay, they're the ones taking and telling them all the information they need to dial in on the firearm to make the shot. All right.
You can teach a monkey to squeeze the trigger.
Right. And then they also sit there sometimes for hours, even 24 hours at a time. And what they're doing is they're sitting there watching everything that's going on. And over that period of time, they start to see what their subjects are doing. They have certain routines. They go from point A to point B at a certain time of the day. They go from point B to point C a certain time of the day. They have certain routines and everything else. So that way, whenever they're finally given the order to take the shot, they know where that person is going to be next. And if they're going from point B to point C, they know they're going from there to there. So if they have to take, and because they're such far range, they have to shoot in front of where the person is physically at this moment because they know that person's walking that way, they'll make the shot. You know what I'm saying? So it's kind of the same thing. The more data that you can collect and information you can collect about whatever incident you're responding to, the environment that you're responding to, the better off you're going to be. The better decision you can make, the safer you're going to be. And at the end of the day, there's none of that stuff out there worth, you guys dying, right? It's kind of that whole thing, you risk a lot to save a lot, you risk none to save nothing, right? Same token. So it's all about that risk mitigation and collecting information and being prepared for that. Whether I mean, again, that whole sniper thing is a little bit over the top compared to pre-plans. But I
was so proud that you pulled that back when you were talking about the sniper. I was like, there's no way he's going to pull this back into being relevant. And you were like collecting information. I was like, holy shit, how did he do that?
Yeah. Well, I mean, you may not know my plan, but I have a plan. Right?
Yeah, you got me on that one. I was like, oh, he's off talking about snipers now.
No. But no, I mean, it really is what it boils down to. And then, but how do we look at that? We look at that as busy work, right? I don't want to go out and do a pre-plan on a building. Really? Why? I could be sitting back at the station, sitting in my recliner, right? That's all we do anyway, right? We sit
That's it.
We sit in a recliner, we take an eat, and we play chess, right?
Yep.
We all know that's not true, right? Yeah. But that's what people think. And I say people, that's what a lot of people think. Not everybody, that's what a lot of people think.
Yeah.
And so
that's what I tell my wife we do.
Absolutely. And so why do they think that? Because we let them think that. Every time you interact with a customer, a member of the public, is an opportunity to educate, right? So let's say you're out doing a pre-plan. Explain to them what you're doing and why you're doing it and why it's to help with their safety and property conservation.
You've pulled almost everything back to communication.
It is.
Communications is really important.
Yeah. Communication, I'm telling you, communication is the key. And again, if you've got a chief sitting up in the corner office that's not coming out and talking to the guys, and not communicating, and here's the deal, you ain't got to like what we're doing, but you need to understand what we're doing, why we're doing it, right? If you typically people, if they know why we're doing it, they may not like it, but if they know why we're doing it, then it's a little bit easier for them to get behind it and deal with it, right? I don't like being told to do something for the sake of doing it.
Well, every complaint always starts with, why are we doing this?
Right.
Yeah,
Right.
Yeah. If I was going to summarize some of the things you've said,
Are you going to be able to do that?
I am. I was thinking about a second ago. You put a really high value on communication. It's like there's a responsibility that exists to give due diligence to communication.
There is.
I would say that the responsibility is a little heavy on the lower rank side. Like I want you to communicate these things to me, but I need to initiate that communication sometimes.
Yes. And I'll also realize that if you haven't been doing that in the past and all of a sudden you start doing it, it could be perceived as you're being counterproductive, because you've never really cared before. So why now you're asking? Are you just trying to be smart?
New?
Yeah, what are you trying to be a smart ass? You know what I'm saying? So you got to be careful about that. And we have to take and communicate in a way that we're prepared to listen as well as talk. Okay, because that's a two-way street. If you're not willing to listen, there is no communication going on.
Let me give you an example of a conversation I had yesterday. We were doing a career development day. Trevor was riding the seat, and we have a task book now in County Fire. So we're working on his task book, and a question came up, and we're communicating, and I was trying to explain to him that when he does end up getting promoted and he sits in the seat, I said, your perspective starts to change. I said, you agree when you take the promotion, now you're an agent. You get the job tailboard, you're driving, you're still having fun and doing all this stuff. When you take the officer spot, now you're agreeing to be an agent of the chief. I felt like that's when the switch happened. Yeah. And I was like,
well, and you're actually very spot on. But where we fail is this: every person should be an agent.
Yeah.
But that's not how we approach it. You know what I'm saying?
I agree.
And that's really a jab at us. And when I say us, the fire chiefs and the supervisors and all that stuff, because when a firefighter comes in, the fire service has changed a lot. All right. It's still kind of that whole 200 years of tradition unimpeded by progress thing going on, but
right.
What a great saying.
But it's still changed a lot. When I got in the fire service, especially my first municipal fire department job, you got on the back of a truck, you sat there. You didn't think for yourself. You did exactly what you were told. And if you weren't told to do anything, you would still be sitting on that truck until you were told to do something, right? Now we expect people to think, but yet, do we really do a good job of empowering them to think? You know what I'm saying? We had these people come in, a different way of thinking and process, and expect them to think, but yet we don't have them really think. And then we don't provide them the information as to why we're doing X, Y, Z, or da-da-da-da, whatever it is. Again, communication.
That's a good indicator for if you fit in that group of giving somebody enough room to fail or not, as if you're training your firefighter to make a decision. And they need to know the scope of the decisions they can make.
Right.
They're not free to make all of them.
Right.
But they have some that they can make.
And that's a good point. So taking off of that point, let's talk about this. So if I'm your company officer, right, and let's say you're my engineer, and I've empowered you to do whatever it is. I don't care what it is. It's something. And you do it, but you do it. What you do is blatantly against policy. blatantly against policy. And let's say that an event occurs as a result of that decision that it gets outside of the bounds of our company, right? So other people know about it, right? And then you say, well, captain, lieutenant, whatever, you're going to cover for me, right?
No.
But see, there's an expectation out there that in some field that you should and would.
Yeah.
And, here's the thing. There's a difference between taking and something that, doesn't cause, any legal issues or ethical issues or whatever. There's a difference between that and, I forgot to take the trash out last night. Okay. There's a difference. But, we talk about brotherhood, right? Brotherhood. Well, brotherhood is not covering for one another if you've done something wrong. Okay?
Yeah, I would say brotherhood absolutely is in play there. Mm-hmm. So in that scenario, if I blatantly went outside of policy achieving this task for you, I fouled. I caused the foul.
Right. And so one, I shouldn't ask you to do something that runs afoul of the policy. Mm-hmm. So if I do that, that's me.
That's
okay?
right. Yep.
But if here's the deal. If from speaking from a brotherhood thing, if I've got a family, right? Mm-hmm. I have a boss. But if you ask me to cover for you, and whatever you've done is illegal and unethical, whatever is significant, and you're asking me to cover for me, you don't care about me.
Right.
But you expect me to cover for you.
And that's a level of communication.
That's a level of communication.
Yeah.
I would say that a higher level of brotherhood would be to hold your brother accountable for his actions versus trying to cover them up.
Yeah, absolutely.
I mean, that doesn't put you in the category as a rat or anything, but maybe help him to own his own mistakes and go down the correct path versus,
Yep. But understand there is a group, a core group, in some fire departments, not all, but some fire departments that the brotherhood is covering for each other regardless, no matter what the issue is.
I'm sure that's outside of our industry. That's everywhere. I'm
it
sure.
is. It is. It's not just a fire service.
Yeah, I'm sure.
And there's going to be a line. There's got to be a line.
Right. Yeah.
Because
absolutely.
if you commit murder, I'm not going to cover for you.
Yeah.
Okay.
I mean, I wouldn't ask you to.
But
maybe I would.
Maybe you would, but I don't know. But I mean that's kind of extreme, example. But
sure,
it's still kind of that paints that the picture of some expectations. They need to be realistic, right? Brotherhood is if you need help, I'm gonna be there to help you, right? If you're taking like right now, like I said, I've got dear friends through the EFO program. One of them literally has a daughter that goes to school here in Wilmington at UNCW, and they live in Wisconsin. All right. If he called me up and said, "Hey, my daughter is in a bad way. She's in trouble. Needs some help." Okay. Guess what? One of y'all gonna get a phone call.
That's fine.
I need you to. I know
Day
you don't.
night.
I know you don't know. I know you don't know this lady, but I need you to go and I need you to find her. I need you to do whatever you can to make sure she's safe and be there until I can get there, they can get there, whatever, and make sure she's taken care of. That is brotherhood.
I think I think the movie that I often reflect, me and my best friend Pat, we talk about it jokingly from time to time.
You mean I'm not your best friend?
my lifetime best friend Pat. We talk about it from time to time, but it came out in a movie. I think it was The Town. It's a great movie. You should watch it. But there's a quote in a scene in there, and one of the guys comes in and he said, "Some people are gonna get hurt. You can't talk about it. I can't tell you anything else. I just need to know you're in or you're out." And the guy answers, "Whose car are we taking?"
Yeah.
Yep. So there's there's something to be said about that. I had some questions to ask you about the qualities of an instructor, but I think you've hit them all. Communication has been the driving force of this entire conversation, which is great. I think it's a giant missing key in the fire service, and it's a big disconnect, I think, sometimes from from officers and
absolutely.
all the way down to people on the line staff.
Yep.
So the progression in communication is always a never stationary thing and always constantly moving, and should be.
Yeah, I think one, and when I say this, it's going to sound like I'm trying to put a feather in my cap. I'm not. It just made me feel good, so I'm gonna share it. We've got a guy that come to work with us not too long ago, and he's from another state, and we were literally, I think it was 2 days ago, they were sitting around the table in the bay, and I walked up and I was just sitting there talking to him and stuff, and I was poking fun at him a little bit, and I said, "Are you ready to go back south?" He's like, "Nope." He said, I'm staying right here. And I was like, "Wait a minute." He said, "You didn't like your chief better down there?" He's like, "We never saw our chief down there." And I was like, "Oh, well, maybe I'm doing something wrong. Maybe I should be hidden." He's like, "No." He said, "In fact, you better hope there's no more openings because I'm trying to recruit."
Not too long ago, Dave Hibben, he talked about his last fire chief in D.C. Every Friday and Saturday night when he was first hired as D.C. chief, every Friday and Saturday night he was Engine 10.
Nice.
And they would offer him, they would be like, "Hey, up front," and he was like, Nope, right back here." So there's a lot to be said about that. My fire chiefs going and hanging out with their peoples.
Yeah. My guys, they're like, when I first got there, I'll tell you this story. I scared the hell out of a couple of my guys one night.
Not you.
No, not. And actually, this was completely unintentional.
Because you sleep so well.
Yeah. So I literally I couldn't sleep, and I went to the fire station. I was in my office working on some stuff, and we got a call. It was just a medical call, and so I walked out to the bay, and we've got a 2-story bay, so at our headquarters station, and so they come down the pole and all that stuff, and so I was sitting over there, waiting. I wasn't checking on them. I wasn't doing any of those things you guys think that we do. And I literally was sitting out there taking, lies. It's all lies. And I was literally sitting out there taking it, waiting, and I was going to just say hey to them, right? And so for whatever reason, they came down the stairs instead of the pole. I was over by the pole, right? And they come down the stairs. So when I come around the corner in front of one of the apparatus, I come around the corner and one of them's already, like getting the stuff on. The other one's kind of still like, cleaning the sleep out of his eyes. I think it's like 4 o'clock in the morning, something like that. And at that point, I realized they didn't know I was there. So I purposely didn't say anything at that point because I didn't scare them.
Goat scream. You should have goat screamed.
I should have, but I didn't. I was trying not to scare them because, to be fair, these guys just woke up. I mean, you know what it's like. You get woke up at 4 o'clock in the morning. You're just trying to figure out where the hell you're at, much less what you're going to do, right? And so I just stood over there, and I figured sooner or later they were going to take and see me because I was standing by the door, the bay door, right? And the one that was getting his gear on looks up and looks through the glass in the apparatus and sees me, and he goat screams. And he scares the crap out of the other guy. And then the other guy's finally coming down going, "What the hell? Why are y'all screaming?" And they're like, "What are you doing here, Chief?" I'm like, "Dude, I was just in my office, doing some work. I was going to say hello, I'm sorry." I hadn't done it since. Because I was like, they're going to think I was checking on them or something. Mm-hmm. I don't know what it was, but I scared them. They turned scared each other, and it was like, all right, I'm just not doing it anymore. And they're like, they literally, because when I first got there, I wanted to make sure they realized that, not that I was checking up on them, but I was there to support them or whatever needed to be done. So, now, honestly, I've caught hydrants more often than I've actually taken and been in charge of a scene since I've been down there. I've literally got a hydrant wrench in my staff vehicle. To get there, and they're like, "Yeah, Chief, what we need you to do? We don't need you to come here and get involved in nothing. That's chaos. We need you to catch that hydrant."
Got it.
No problem. I got it. I'll be the best hydrant man you got. So, it's funny, but yeah.
Good. Let's segue away from this a little bit. I want to talk to you about what we were discussing at dinner. I want to discuss a little bit about your nonprofit and what you got going on there.
Okay. I was a little concerned. We talked about lots of things at dinner.
Well, some conversations we'll leave at the dinner
Yeah,
table.
yeah. Let's do that. So
now, I want to talk about that and your trips to DR and what's going on with all that.
All right. So the fire chief over at Bowling Springs Fire Department, Steve Graham. I can't take credit. They were doing this before I got involved. But the way that got started was he was sitting in an airport and actually met this gentleman that's sitting there, and they got talking. The gentleman asked him what he did for a living, just kind of chit chat, and he said he worked for the fire department. And he said, the gentleman said, "I need your help." Like, what? And so, okay.
Right.
I don't know where this is going, right? And so he said, I've got a fire department in Dominican Republic that has a fire truck, has no freaking clue how to use it, and has no equipment, no training. You got to understand, there's some departments, fire departments, that I'm not going to say they take advantage of the situation, but I think they need to go a little further. So they'll donate stuff like trucks, equipment, whatever, and they'll donate the stuff. And if they actually travel with it or show up when it gets there, it's like, hey, here's your stuff. Thank you. See you later. And then they go off somewhere else.
They get their publicity and they're out.
And sometimes it's not even that. Sometimes it's not even publicity. It's just that they it's a feel good. They take and donate the stuff, and then they don't do any training. They figured people will figure it out.
Okay.
Whatever.
Well, they probably think everybody functions like their department.
Right.
Sure.
And so I don't want to paint the picture that it's intentional.
Sure.
Right. Now some of them will do it in conjunction with a vacation.
Sure.
Okay. But so this fire department, Polo, it's in the Barahona province, which is basically the southwestern part of the country. If you know anything about that area, so Hispaniola is the island, and Dominican Republic takes pretty much the eastern portion of it, and Haiti is the western part. So the Barahona province is kind of the southwestern part of the country, very close to Haiti. And Polo, you're going to have a mix of Dominicans. You're going to have some Haitians as well. Dominicans speak Spanish. It's a unique dialect of Spanish, so it's not like Spanish from Spain. It's very much Caribbean, but it's even more. It's kind of like how we have different dialects here in this country with even
right.
English.
Sure.
Same thing there. And then the Haitians typically speak Creole, all right, which is a little bit different language. So they're having this conversation. Long story short, this department, Polo, has got a truck that was donated, but they have like almost no hose on it. Training, didn't really know how to use it. Have no firefighter training. All right, so literally they're going to be able to take and possibly pull one hose, and if they can get water from point A to point B, they're going to put it on the fire, and that's pretty much the extent of their firefighting. So at this point in time, they didn't even know how to operate the truck, and so he enlisted Steve to try to help with that. This gentleman had been doing missionary work for 30 years. In fact, I think they have 10 kids, I think something like that.
Bless his heart.
Yeah, no doubt, right? And so his son Tim, they moved to Polo whenever they were little. Like I think Tim was a couple years old, maybe. And so Tim lived in Polo for the majority of his growing up. Okay, like I think he was in 20-something whenever he come back to this country. So he is fluent in Spanish and he's fluent in Creole. And so whenever Steve was talking to this gentleman and they made the plan to go down there and do this training, he enlisted some help from additional firefighters and stuff, guys that knew how to, pump trucks. I mean, here's the deal. Fire chief don't need to be teaching somebody how to pump a truck. Okay, you need to have an engineer do that.
Remember where you came from.
Yeah, I know. But I do believe that, you take and have people who are relevant and still efficient at that. Yeah, I can get water from here to there, but I'm probably not the best one for you to do that with. And so anyway, they planned this trip, went down there, and I think that was 1 or 2 trips before my first trip. And so they started talking about it and everything, and I just kind of like, just get a little more interested. I said, hey, look, just let me know. I got a passport, I'll go. And I got the opportunity to go. And after that first time going, man, it was like, this is something else. And it's like, yeah, it makes you feel good, but it's not for me. It made me feel like it from an instructor standpoint that, I had the opportunity to actually make a difference, right? So made the trip down there the first time, brought a bunch of equipment, and you would think that, those at this point in time, the guys had some firefighter training. We've gone. I mean, we've done LP gas training, which you think, what the hell are you doing LP gas training for? You're in a third world country. Well, let me tell you why. Their electricity. They have the same electricity we have here, right? Same outlets, but it's not dependable. All right, so you can't run a regular stove oven off of that. So their stoves and ovens are run off LP gas. So literally, they'll have a 20-pound cylinder sitting in their kitchen, connected with hose that may or may not be rated for gas.
Right.
And they're usually not secured. So if they get knocked over, kicked over, whatever, and they're cooking, there's a fire, and then there's a bigger fire, and then, kind of a calamity from there. And then, what happens if they don't get the fire out? Then you have a possibility of levy, and you take down a whole freaking, part of the neighborhood, because, a lot of those houses are not structurally sound, right? So it's a big risk for them. So, we've done LP gas training, we've done medical training, we've done, pumping, firefighting, obviously, high angle stuff, because they go up in the jungles and things we take for granted around here. You think, well, if somebody gets in a wreck, what are we going to do? We're going to respond to it. We're going to take care of them. If they're in trap, we're going to cut them out, whatever. Well, how are you going to do that if you don't have any tools to cut them out with? All right.
Yeah.
I mean, yeah, you got hand tools, and you can do a lot with hand tools, but not if you ain't been trained. Literally, there are times that people that were trapped in vehicles that probably could have been saved if that had happened in this country, that weren't saved in that country, and they were entrapped so bad that the body and the vehicle was eventually towed off to the junkyard.
That's insane.
I mean, so that's stuff that we take for granted. So they literally are looking for ways to better their community and help the community. So after my first trip or two down there, we decided to incorporate as a nonprofit, and we get donations of equipment from pretty much all over, and whether it's turnout gear, whether it's hose, nozzles, appliances, apparatus, stuff like that. If it's still useful, right? I mean, don't donate junk. Don't donate something that ain't working. Period. Okay, but keep in mind that we have standards in this country that don't exist in some of these other countries. So if there's still useful life in something, it just doesn't meet a standard, or there's something newer out, and you're replacing it with that something newer, then that stuff still has a use. Then it's something that that can make a lot of good, right? And that they would never be able to afford on their own. Okay, so we get this equipment, we go through it and make sure it still works. If it's something we need to do a little bit of maintenance on or tweaking, whatever repairs, we'll do that. And then once we get a certain amount of stuff together, there's a lot of hoops we had to jump through, but we partner with the U.S. military. So there's a program that's called the Denton program. It's a humanitarian aid program that nonprofits can basically use the leverage of the military, U.S. military, and its assets to help. And so, for instance, we fly a lot of this equipment into the country, and what the military gets from it, obviously they're going to take and get some PR from it, stuff like that. But their pilots, they get flight time, they get flight hours. They need flight hours anyway. They're load masters. They need experience in loading different types of equipment, different loads, stuff like that. And so this gives them real world load experience, and in the process to do something good to help somebody. So we literally airlift this equipment in with the Air Force. We take and get it all packaged up to their standards and everything, get it approved. We bring it down to Charleston and It sits at Charleston until they've got a flight crew ready to go, and they've got a time. Typically we don't get a whole lot of notice. It might be a week and a half, maybe 2 weeks if we're lucky. That we have to have people in the country ready to meet the aircraft. Typically we fly into one of the airports. It might be one of the military bases if we have the opportunity to do that. We have to coordinate everything through the U.S. Embassy and have you use embassy representative there. There's a lot of custom stuff we have to deal through, logistics wise, and then we meet the aircraft there. We get all this equipment off there, and we have to have logistically, have plans to be able to move all this stuff. And then from there, we typically fly into the Capitol, but us personally, because we had to fly separate. We don't get to fly on the military planes, which would be really cool, but we don't. So then we have to, from the time we get in the country, it's about 5.5 hours from that point to Polo. And if you've never been in a third world country, that makes for a very interesting trip. 5.5 hours for a trip that probably in this country would probably maybe take 3 hours. But you got to think about the roadway conditions. You got to think about the traffic. Really down there, painted lines, dotted lines, signs, all those are kind of general suggestions. You might have 3 lanes each direction, and then all of a sudden it's really 5 lanes in one direction, and you've got vehicles coming straight at you. So it gets interesting, and there are military checkpoints because they're looking for people who have come into the country illegally. A lot of times Haitians come into the country illegally, so they will stop the buses and check people and stuff like that. But generally speaking, we've never had any issues. We really haven't. They usually see us. They know what we're doing. We've been there enough that a lot of them recognize us. So we generally don't have a problem. They really don't. But you got to take it into account. You're going from the capital, which might have 2 or 3 million people in it, to a community might have 10, 15,000 people in it, and the capital's got 2 or 3 million people in it. Well, it's got the same problems you'd have in this country with 2 or 3 million people in the same place, right? You're going to have crime, you're going to have traffic, you're going to have all those kind of things. But when we get out to where we're working at and stuff like that, I mean, I've never felt unsafe. Although I've seen some very unsafe things, never felt unsafe. It's I think the community really appreciates everybody, what they're doing there. The thing that we have to get used to though is how here we're just like we got this task of things we got to get done, and we're going to do it, right?
A timeline,
right?
Sure.
So that means if that means we work through lunch, right? Mm-hmm. Not there, and that's a hard thing to get used to.
I can appreciate that.
Yeah, that is a hard thing to get used to because you'll be sitting there teaching a class, and you've got this whole list of things that you're trying to accomplish, right, in this period of time, and you might have. And when you say a week, well, okay, you got a day travel on each end, so now you're down to 3 days, right? And so you're sitting there and you're trying to get through all these things and hit all these topics because you realize how important it is. Because literally, this training could literally be life or death for some of these people because they don't know, right? So you be sitting there teaching a class, and about 11 o'clock, you start seeing people kind of peeling away, and next thing you know, you're sitting there teaching yourself, right? And
they all got the memo, but you didn't.
Right, yeah. And, my first time was because, I've been to the Caribbean more than once, and, there's this thing called siesta, right? And I've always thought it's like, okay, well, you're going to go take a nap, right? No, it's about an hour and a half, 2 hours each day, about middle of the day, that they literally just go and sit around and talk to each other. And the thing you got to keep in mind is it's a third world country. They don't have a lot. They don't have a lot of money, okay? We can feed 40 people off $30, right? But what they have is their time. So that's what they give to each other. They give their time to each other. And it's a level of respect. right? So we could be there teaching, doing stuff all day, and we were sitting there running, ragging, and dragging butt, and tired, and everything else. And all we want to do is get back to a bed and lay down and sleep. And I mean, I've literally been in front, and one of the guys, local guys, in their the front of their house, sitting around, talking, drinking coffee, because they grow coffee. They're really good coffee. But drinking coffee and eating. They've got this like type of salami down there. It's really good. And just sitting there and talking. And it might be 2:00 in the morning, and we got to be back out and ready to go next morning. But that's just what you do.
It's interesting how it takes the experience of a third world country to put value on things. They value their time.
Absolutely.
That's something that runs out in life.
It does.
Yeah.
It does.
Money, maybe not. It may run out for some people. It may not.
Nope.
But time definitely runs out. That's pretty cool.
And the other thing that I've noticed with this experience is that need is an inventor of ingenuity, because that truck I told you about that they had didn't know how to pump before. We literally had pallets of equipment coming down there, and we noticed that one of the things they had this. It was not hard suction hose like we're used to, right? Okay, but it was more rigid than flat hose. That's what they were using to draft water to fill the tank on this truck. Okay, and this really was more of a tanker. It had a pump on it, but it's more of a tanker. But they would have problems with that hose because it was not rigid enough. It would collapse trying to draft the water. And so that was like a big issue for them. And I went around looking at the truck and stuff, and I noticed they had a direct tank fill on the back of it. The only problem is it didn't have a swivel. It had the valve, but it didn't have a swivel. And I'm like, well, hell, we got a bunch of stuff coming on the plane, and it's pallets of equipment. Let's look through it. So we looked through it and realized, okay, there's at least two appliances on there that have swivels on them. We had a gate valve, and we had a Siamese. And so I was like, well, we can probably fix that. We'll take salvage from one of those and put it on this. And finally got there, and we're making a mad dash through all these crates and unboxing stuff. And you got to keep in mind, this is like Christmas to them too. So right. As soon as they open this box, they're seeing stuff that they've only seen in pictures, right, or in books. And so we also had, I think on this trip we had 3 interpreters because we had so much training going on, and every one of them was tied up. And I'm sitting over here, looking at this, and I got these 2 appliances out there, and I look at them, and they're both Akron, and the valve on the truck is Elkhart. I'm going, I don't think that's going to match. So anyway, we take it apart, and you know how that works, right? It swivels. It has a little plug on it. You take the plug out, it's got bearings in it, and that rides in a groove. That's what holds them together. So I do that, and I take one of the bearings out there and go and look, and it's not going to work. It's smaller bearing. We needed smaller bearings. And so I'm like, great. And so I'm trying to, because I don't speak Spanish. I wish I did. My dumb ass took Latin in high school. But anyway, so
decade of college did you no good.
Yeah, exactly. So I'm sitting there, and I'm showing them, literally showing this guy the bearing and that where it fits, and showing how it works on the part that actually works, the appliance that we took apart, and showed him the groove and that it's not the same size. And he goes like that, takes that bearing and the swivel that come off the tank fill, because they had the swivel, they didn't have the bearings or the plug to hold it together. And he leaves.
Throws it in the ocean.
He leaves. I'm like, yeah. I mean, it could have. I didn't know. I didn't know where he was going. And I'm like, at this point in time, I'm kind of had a little bit of a panic attack, because I'm like, I don't know what he's doing. Well, at the same token, he's been talking to me in Spanish. I had no freaking clue what he was saying.
Yeah.
Unbeknownst to me, one of our interpreters, Tim, had been kind of doing his thing, but also kind of listening in on this. And he sees my the panic on my face, right? And he's like, "It's okay. He's got it." I'm like, are you sure? He's like, he's got it.
He's an engineer. Just hold your horses.
So like 15 minutes goes by, and at this point in time, I'm like, he's just gone. Maybe he thought he could sell this shit. I don't know, you know. And so he takes and finally comes back, and he puts the swivel down there, gives me back the one bearing that he took, and he opens his hand, and he has these little rings, man. There's like a bunch of these little rings like this, and they're little metal rings, and in those little metal rings, there's like 5 or 6 little ball bearings in them. And I'm like, there ain't no way. Ain't no way. And one of the guys that was with us had a Leatherman. I took the Leatherman, and I pulled the metal ring apart and pulled the little bearing out of there and went over there, and it was a perfect fit.
Wow.
And I'm like, you've got to be kidding me. So I take and pull all the things out of there. I'm excited now. The little plastic plug, that would fit in the thing. So I did salvage that from the other one. And we literally went back there, and I showed them how to do it, put all the bearings in there and filled that thing up till we couldn't get any more bearings in it, put that plug on there and spun it, and it swiveled. And I'm like,
cool.
Now, and I told Tim, I said, ask him where he got those, because I thought I had an idea where he got them from, but I wasn't sure. And he asked him, and he said, they're bearings out of the hub of a bicycle. I'm like,
that's pretty cool, man.
We couldn't even speak the same language, but we communicated.
Mm-hmm.
You see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And that completely changed how they were able to fill that, because they had a pump, right? A portable pump at a cistern that they could take and do that with, but they just didn't have the ability to connect to that valve. And it was just literally, it was like, I can't make this shit up, right? And to me, that was just an amazing experience. We communicated without speaking the same language. I didn't think it was going to happen. I want to make sure it's clear. But, yeah, I mean, it's just crazy.
That's awesome that he was able to think outside the box enough to be like, I've seen some shit.
And the things we take for granted, man, so they didn't have a hose bed on this truck. Well, they had a hose bed, but it was not divided, and they didn't have pre-connected lines. Well, we helped them fix that. You know what we did? We took a 2x10, and we took a circular saw. We manually ripped a 2x10 down and made dividers. Again, remember that electricity I told you about, right?
Mm-hmm.
Well, yeah. One time you might have 110. Next time you might have 140. Next time you might have 80. Next time you might have nothing. Okay, so something that should have taken no more than 3 to 5 minutes took us 20 minutes just to cut the wood, because the power's
You should call me. I've got an LP powered circular saw.
Well, you weren't really doing me no good here in the country, all right? So literally one of the things we're going to do is we're actually going to buy them, whether it's a DeWalt or whatever, a battery power kit, because they can charge the batteries off that power.
Sure. And
then once they have that, it's reliable. But, yeah.
If somebody wanted to donate fire equipment or whatever, if they wanted to donate or help with this whole thing, how would they go about that? We'll be sure to put that in the show notes. Okay.
First and foremost is obviously equipment, stuff like that, because what we're doing is we're with that department in Polo. The chief there is Chief Chalene. He's kind of like our on the ground contact there, so he helps us coordinate throughout the country. I mean, literally when we come in, we've got firefighters from all over the country come there to take advantage of this training, and they sleep on the floor and stuff in the fire station to be able to do it. And so all the equipment we get, we bring it in, and then it's distributed out. So they've got a chief's advisory group. They literally sit there because it's so much need in that country that they literally will sit down and prioritize. Okay, this department doesn't even have a fire truck. Okay. Well, guess what? That's going to be higher on the list for a fire truck next time, right? This department, they've got firefighters, but they don't have any gear, right? Well, we're going to put them in some protective equipment, that kind of stuff. So really, the equipment, just get in contact with us. I'll leave you my contact information. They can contact me that way. It's.
Is there a
No, we don't have a website or anything like that. We literally everything that we do, we spend money on down there.
Okay.
So we don't have a website. We do have a nonprofit, so we can give donation letters, stuff like that, if that's something somebody wants. So whether it's equipment, any kind of, just explain something real quick on funding. So any funding that we get literally goes to the operations there. So what that means is if we have to rent equipment, like with forklift to get stuff off the aircraft, we have to rent a tractor trailer to travel the stuff from one point to the other. We have to pay a driver or whatever, stuff like that. We also pay for meals for them, not us. We actually pay our own way out of our own pocket. So that's whether we're our commercial flights, we pay for that ourselves. If we have to take and get hotels and stuff on either end of the trip, we pay for that ourselves. We're very fortunate that when we're in Polo, we've got a local group there that will put us up typically if they've got room, so that we don't have to pay for it all, so nobody pays for that. But anything that would be for us ourselves, we pay for ourselves. We don't use the donation money for that. All that money literally goes for things to take care of there and make things happen. So yeah, I'll leave my contact information.
Okay.
You're welcome to contact me that way. And then we can just say, all right, well, what is it you got? And then, logistically, we got to figure out, okay, well, if it's wherever you're at and we need
Right.
it here, how do we get it there? Because again, the funding, it obviously takes money to make those things happen unless somebody's going to take and drive it down. And then we've
Sure.
got people to do that too.
Sure.
And when we get stuff in the Greenville area and we stage it there, we eventually have to drive it all to Charleston, and we do that ourselves. We drive that ourselves. We've got some firefighters that have CDLs and drive trucks on their days off, so they take and they'll come in and help us out and truck the stuff down and do it that way. So
Okay. Well, I'm optimistic, but I believe you'll have an influx of folks who want to help
well, I mean,
after this.
Yeah, anything we can, and then from individuals, we're always looking for opportunities. What we don't want is somebody that's just taking and really looking at it for themselves. All right,
Sure.
we don't mind people feeling proud about what they're doing. I mean, because they literally are helping, but we want them to be committed. So. That don't mean you have to make every trip.
Sure.
But we need you to be involved.
Mm-hmm.
And we need people to teach. Just like we talked about earlier. I'm not the one to be teaching you how to operate a truck. Okay. Yes, I've done it. I know how to do it, but I can't. When's the last time I was driving a truck? Okay, driving, operating, pumping a truck. Am I going to be as efficient at it as someone who's an engineer on it every third day? No. All right. So same thing. Or if you're an extrication guru, then guess what? They've got some very unique extrications, issues.
Yeah.
And chances are they're going to be using, 20, 30, 40, 50-year-old extrication equipment. So you have to take and figure out how to adapt and overcome. And that's just reality. The other thing I would say is, we have standards in this country. There are no standards in that country. All right. So you're going to have to take and think outside the box. And sometimes that means you're going to do things that you wouldn't get away with in this country. I don't mean illegal things like that. I'm talking about
safety aspects.
Sure. Taking
Yeah.
risks, stuff like that.
NFPA recommendations.
Right. It's just, you don't have an option
Right.
there. Okay. So there's going to be things like that. So if you're one of those people that everything's got to be right by the book, black and white, and you can't think outside the box, you probably are not going to have a good time here. Also, if you're not willing to take and sleep outside, if it takes that, then you're probably not the right person. That don't mean we sleep outside on a regular basis, but it's not outside the realm of possibility,
Sure.
right?
Yeah.
If people that don't look like you make you nervous, you probably don't need to go, okay? And that holds true whether you're here or there or anywhere else, right? You just have to be open-minded, and you have to treat people with respect, and realize that they don't know what you know, but they are really, really committed and willing to learn if you're willing to take the time, and they really appreciate it.
Cool. Well,
It
Chief.
sounds like a really good organization.
Yeah, it's and it's still, I mean, it's still new, so I mean, you know, I would use organization loosely.
I got you. Yeah.
But I mean, you know, it's everything, like I say, everything's above board and all that stuff. I mean, and all the money that we get donated, it goes down there. It doesn't go to us. It doesn't even pay our own way. We pay ourselves. Yeah, we out of our own pocket. We pay our own way. So
you've tied everything back to communication. I got one more communication question for you. In your fire department, as far as mental health goes, are you addressing that? Is that something that's on the?
So a couple different ways. We in South Carolina, we actually have a state level group that is geared specifically towards the fire service generally, but also emergency services also. But it's literally part of the State Firefighter Association. And that chief I was telling you about, his wife is basically one of the heads of that. So we're very fortunate to have her in the area, but we also have some other resources there from through that group. Of course, you know, we have the normal, you know, municipal EAP program, things like that. But we also have a nurse for the city that's that you know, sees all the employees every year as part of our health benefits. Okay, and so she has a way of having a little bit different rapport, because again, you know, we are our own worst enemy, right? We don't want to show weakness. We don't want to, you know, our ego and all that kind of stuff. So where I might not come to you and say, hey, I'm really struggling with this, right? I might go to her and mention it. Or maybe because the spouses are also included in our insurance, they get to see her as well. They may take and call her and say, hey, look, at home I'm really seeing some changes, some things that concern me. Can you kind of, you know, just check, you know, and that kind of stuff. And that gives us yet another way to take and identify. And, you know, when we do that, we have to be very careful, because what we don't want to be is, oh, well, if you tell the nurse something, then you're going to have to go see EAP, you know, whatever. So what we're getting ready to implement is that we're going to take and try to partner with that state group, and at least on a quarterly basis, have them come in and, you know, on each shift, okay, and just do some kind of mental health awareness type training, right? But at the same time, they're going to open that door that if anybody feels like they need to talk or anything like that, then they have the opportunity to talk to that person or someone in that group. They don't even have to tell the fire department about it. They don't have to tell the city about it, anything else. And literally it would just be, but it opens that additional door, that other avenue. You know, and I'll tell you from personal experience, you know, I've been there. I've been that guy that, you know, well, this shit don't bother me. You know, and it's really about ego and machoism and stuff like that. And you know, when I fire service, before I got out of high school, I dealt with my first two fire fatalities. Now I can't tell you how many, like, you know, wrecks and stuff like that. And again, you know, that shit don't bother me. You know, well, let me tell you something. That's bullshit. You know, so what it took for me to realize that was a personal friend that we responded to. Him and his wife, we knew them personally, knew the family personally, and we responded to his 7-year-old boy that had been run over by his own work truck. And you know, when we rolled up on scene, I don't remember I had gone to a meeting, so I had the staff vehicles when I was out 51, Station 51. What number is that now? 12. Okay. So yeah, I guess I don't know if that's better or not, but anyway, I had gone to a meeting, so I had a staff vehicle, and I was going back. Well, we had a cardiac arrest, so I responded to the cardiac arrest with the engine. I was in staff vehicle. I just met them there, and we dealt with that. And when we were getting ready to clear from that, we got a call for a subject hit by a vehicle, and it was you remember Wilmington Materials? Is that still out there?
Yes.
Okay. So yeah, and so obviously left out there. Of course, 2 separate vehicles. The engine got there before I did, and when I pulled around the engine and parked and got out, I immediately recognized a truck that was sitting there as something that was familiar to me. And it was specifically because there was a tag on the front of it. This individual had a landscaping business, and had this tag on every one of his vehicles, period. And so as I was walking up, I was thinking, I really hope this ain't somebody I know, And when I got up there, he was kneeled down over his son, begging us to, help him. And I mean, there's times that it just ain't gonna happen. Yeah. But you still go through the motion, do what you do. And like I said earlier, about that whole thing, I think there's special people who do all kinds of jobs, and I wouldn't be a nurse because you can't, disassociate yourself from it.
Right.
This is what happened for me. So we go through the motions. He's begging us to take care of him and all that stuff, and I'm just like, we're doing everything we can do, and fully realizing that now, they're going to transport his son to the hospital, which is not going to be a good outcome. And my wife had worked with this little boy's mother, literally in the same office. Okay, same office, same core unit, everything. At this particular time, she was working at a different location for the same company. So I called my wife and I said, "Hey, look, I'm coming to get you. There's been an accident, and we need to go get so and so." And so I said, "I'll tell you about it on the way." So I went and picked her up. I told her about what was going on the way, and when we got to where the other person was, we walked in. Of course, she was really happy to see us. Hadn't seen us in a couple weeks or whatever, and all that stuff. And it was like, "Look, you need to get your stuff. There's been an accident. We need to go." And she's like, "Oh my God!" And she said her husband's name, and it was like, "No, it's not him, and it's so and so."
Bro, that's tough. That's
yeah,
tough.
yeah, dude. I mean, yeah, and so all the way to the hospital, I know what I know, and she's obviously upset and wanting to know, and is he gonna be okay? I'm like, "Look, we're doing everything we can do. It doesn't look good. I didn't want to paint a hope that wasn't there,
unrealistic picture,
right?"
Yeah.
And so I was like, we just need to get you there. That's the important thing. And of course, as soon as we walked through the doors, the doctor was there to meet her and tell her the news and all that stuff. And so then after the funeral, we were back at the house and all that stuff with them, and they obviously had some questions. And I remember sitting actually on the edge of their bed. It was weird because I was sitting on the edge of their bed, and they were sitting at a couple chairs. I felt like I was kind of like we're sitting here with you guys. I mean, like I'm on in the middle of all this. And so they were like, well, we got some questions. And I'm like, "Look, I mean, we've been friends for a long time. I'll answer the questions. I will answer the questions truthfully. Just, understand you may not be prepared for the answer." And so they sat there and asked, and like, "Well, when did you know?" I was like, "I knew as soon as I walked up," and all that kind of stuff. So we got through all that, and the father, he went through some extremely rough times. He blamed himself. It was not his fault, but he blamed himself. And what it boiled down to is the son basically worshipped him, and he asked to be able to take and stay out of school that day to be able to go to work with Dad.
Yeah.
And he asked to do something that probably your own parents have done. Let you move a truck, right? And he moved the truck, got out of it, didn't have it in park, and an accident occurred, and he lost his life. And so the father struggled with that for some time. There was definitely probably some suicidal thoughts. I can't speak for him, but I know he struggled with that for a long time. And the issue for us was that where I had always felt like I'd been able to separate myself from the situations in the past, pack it up, go home, and forget about it. There wasn't you couldn't forget this. We had babysat for this kid. We knew him before he was born, right? Mm-hmm. So as time went on, we grew apart. And that wasn't because they blamed us. It was because my own issue of I felt like every time they saw me, they were going to associate seeing me with the worst day of their life.
Yeah.
And so we literally grew apart. It took that for me to finally realize that, you can sit here and say that this stuff doesn't bother you, and you for a lot of times you can compartmentalize the stuff, but what you don't realize is it's still sitting there. It's still there. And if you're in this long enough, something's going to happen. Maybe it's not as dramatic as what I just described, but something is going to happen. Or maybe you don't have kids, and then you have kids, and things change. All right, something is going to happen where you are no longer going to be able to, distance yourself from that, and you're going to have to deal with it. And that ain't something that you need to deal with alone. Okay. And sometimes that talking about it in groups, and for me, telling the story is I say therapeutic. That's what's helped me be able to be more comfortable with it. I still don't like it. Okay, it's one of those things where
Sure.
I wish I could unsee some of the things I've seen. Well, I definitely wish I could unsee that. But you have to somehow figure out to be able to process those experiences and things. And sometimes that takes, going and talking to someone, and they're not there to judge you. Okay, they're there to help you kind of, in a very non-judging way, all right, in a safe atmosphere where you don't have to worry about somebody saying, well, damn, if you break down and start crying, you're weak. Your ego is hurt, right? None of that crap happens. And we have that macho ego crap in the fire service. And, I can say that because I've been there. I've done that, right? Mm-hmm. And my grandfather used to say, don't do as I do, do as I say do. Well, you know what? That used to piss me off, but now I know about it. I understand that now, and think about, the kids and stuff, the things I've done in my life and got away with, maybe sometimes got injured, but, got away with, I see danger in everything. Oh, yeah. So you had to find a balance, because now you see danger in everything with your kids, right? But you got to let them grow up too. And it kind of goes back to that thing we were talking about earlier. Y'all hate this probably by now about wrapping stuff back in. But we talked about taking and letting your supervisors have a little bit of room to be able to fail, right? Well, you do that, but you don't want them to get hurt, right? Mm-hmm. Same token, you have to find that happy balance. I can't take and put my child in a bubble for her entire life, right? But at the same token, I don't want her to get hurt either, and I see danger in everything. Mm-hmm. So it really is a trade-off, and you have to take and find that balance. And it's true in many aspects of your life. It really is.
Change doesn't happen overnight, right?
No.
I think everybody in the room would want people to get to where they feel comfortable talking about things. Mm-hmm. How about the people that we've missed that window? In other words, they've gone through something, a divorce or on scene. Mm-hmm. There's all kinds of parts of our life that bring things that are troublesome for folks. So this person that is listening right now, that's past that, it's past time to talk, and now he's struggling. Right. So how can we make it safe for that person to seek help without that fear of, if I go tell somebody that I'm having these thoughts, they're going to take my job away. Mm-hmm. They're going to take my kids away. They're going to put me in a padded room.
Right.
How can we change it and make it okay? And I completely admit there might not be an answer yet.
Well, and I'm not going to sit here and tell you that I have an answer, because I'm not a healthcare professional, mental health professional. But what I would tell you is that the probably the biggest hurdle to opening that door is that fear of exactly what you're talking about. So you have to give them tools and people to be able to talk to where it is anonymous, right? Because if it's anonymous, truly anonymous, then
they can't take
anything away from you, right?
That's a good point.
And there are services and groups out there for that. The chances are there when you talk about specifically dealing with what we deal with and what we see, they may not specialize in that, but chances are they can at least point you in the right direction. But they typically are well versed in the thoughts of self-guilt or, self-harm, or, you feel like there's no end, there's no way out and stuff like that. So those groups, they're a phone call away. Okay. But you have to take and make that step, because, the other side of it is if you as a supervisor start seeing one of your guys start taking and kind of, where they're usually outgoing and everything, and they start kind of, becoming a recluse and being to themselves and complete, personality change, or I say this because I don't ever sleep, and you're gonna be taking try to
right.
but or their sleep patterns are off, or whatever, something changes that's not normal. We as I say supervisors, but part of the team, right? We have a responsibility that if we see that we at least ask, right?
Mm-hmm.
And if it comes to the point where you feel like they're literally in danger, or someone else is in danger because of it, then you have to act on that. And sometimes that means that, at the end of the day, you might be called not part of the brotherhood because you said something, right? But maybe you saved their life, maybe you saved others. It's not always easy to do. And if you really care about that person, it's a double-edged sword, because on one hand you care about them, you don't want to see them struggling like that. On the other hand, you don't want to see them take and do something bad.
That accountability thing we were talking about earlier.
Yeah.
Sometimes the real brotherhood's
buried
in accountability.
Here's the thing. So a lot of times in the fire service we talk about, he's not a good leader. Okay. There's a difference between leadership and management, right? Management is always doing things right. Leadership is doing the right thing. That's not always the same thing. Okay.
Sure.
Management is literally something that's black and white, and there's people that's the only way they can function. Okay. Black and white. It's written down. You do X, Y, Z at this point in time. You do this now, and so on down the line. There's certain steps. Those are policies, procedures, things like that, right? And then there's leadership, and that's doing the right thing. And sometimes that almost becomes an adaptive challenge, because it's not always spelled out. What is the right thing? Don't know. It's sometimes it's going that extra step for Miss Smith. You notice that you respond there, and they don't have heat. You go maybe see if there's a community organization can help them get heat. Maybe it's because they don't have power. Maybe make that contact for them because they don't know it exists, or maybe they don't have the ability to contact them. Make that contact for them and say, hey, look, we responded to this location. It's a single mom and a child, and noticed they didn't have heat. We asked about it. They don't have power, right? Or maybe they don't have a heater, right? See what resources are out there. Don't ever pass by a problem. Don't ever pass by an opportunity.
I'll hit you with one more. I hate to paint you into a corner.
Are you fine?
I like picking your brain. We miss you around here.
Not a whole lot there,
Yeah.
but okay.
On the other side of that, the person that feels so badly and is struggling, and they picked up the phone. They managed to get to that point, strength wise. Like that's a
Yeah, absolutely. And here's the deal: a lot of people look at it as a weakness. It's not. That's the bravest thing you can do.
I agree with you 100%. Yeah. So I just had a conversation last night, and I'm gonna run this idea by you. When being the person that's struggling in this situation, your ability to absorb the world's problems gets less and less, right? Like your fuse gets shorter, and then your capacity.
You become cynical and all kinds of things.
Yeah. And an analogy I came up with is when you're healthy and everything's going, you're this big ship storming through the ocean, and the waves don't matter.
Right.
And then the more you're exposed to things, and
you become a dinghy.
Yeah. And every little thing's up and down, and something that really shouldn't affect you might have been that last little push. So now you're on the phone with somebody else who hopefully isn't also in a dinghy, right?
Right.
So you're that person. How are you talking to me? Can you advise that person on how to help this guy, like or girl, whoever it is?
So let me make sure I understand what you're asking. You're telling me, or you're asking me that if you were the person that was struggling, and you've called me, and have informed me, you're struggling with something, all that stuff. Well, first of all, here's the deal. I can tell you what I feel like I would do, but you keep in mind this is just like any other practice in situational, dealing with situations, right? I can tell you that I think what I would do is first and foremost, I would start by listening, right? Because remember, we don't always do a good job of that. Listen, and then I would really take and try to talk to you and try to get an idea of how much struggle you're going through, because that's going to depend on what I do, right?
Okay.
I'm just going to be honest with you. Because if you're literally on the verge of taking your own life, then I'm going to take and do everything I can to stop that. Whether that's, hey, look, let's get together, have something to eat. Probably drinking at that point probably not a good idea. But let's go out and do something. Let's get together and let's talk. That way, and I would just paint it as let's get away from any prying ears. Because here's the deal: we all know fire stations have ears, right?
Yeah, lots of them.
Yeah, the walls. Yeah. Let's go out and just you and I. Let's go talk and things like that. But let's do it now, right?
Yep.
And hell, if you're at work, let's figure out how to get you off work. Tell them Tell your supervisor you are not feeling well and you need to take some sick time, right?
Yep,
they don't have to know why, right? Mm-hmm. That's not a requirement. And then let's go out and spend some time together and talk, right? And then from there, I'm just going to take and try to talk and kind of get a good idea of really what is going on, how you got to where you're at. Try to see if what you've done, because typically by that point you've tried some things to cope, right? And it could be that you've started coping with alcohol. Could be that you find yourself not being able to sleep, so you say, I'm staying up because I feel better when I'm not sleeping, right? I'm not laying in the bed waiting to go to sleep and in my own mind and can't shut it off and that kind of stuff, right?
I'll make something pretty clear for you. Mm-hmm. I've been there. I didn't go to alcohol. Mm-hmm. Laying in my bed made me scared to death, so I wouldn't get in it. Mm-hmm. Moving was how I coped.
Yep.
So that's the state of mind that leads to this phone call, if it happens.
Right, if it happens. And in my case, here's the deal. That's not a fun situation to be in, but if you care about the other person on the other end of the phone, it really boils down to, you do the hard thing, right? And the first thing is you've got to try to take and intervene to keep them from doing something to harm themselves. Because if they harm themselves, there's nothing you can be able to do to take and help them cope with the problem.
Right.
Right. So, again, I would try to take and get them away from being by themselves so they're not sitting there swimming in their own thoughts. And I would drop everything I'm doing to take and try to make that happen. So, like we were talking about earlier, I've got friends all over this country, some in this room, obviously, that if you called me up in that type of situation, it's going to take me it's about 5.5 hours to drive here, so it's probably going to take me about 4.5, maybe 4.
But you'll get there.
But we're going to get together, and we're going to talk and stuff like that, and then if we can take and really have a conversation, which I feel like the guys in this room, that we could have that conversation, and that that there's a comfort level there that hell, I just told you my story, right? That I'm not going to you're not going to feel judged by me, and all that stuff, and we're going to talk through it and figure out, and then I'm going to say, okay, what is your concern about getting help, right? What is the concern? Let's try to talk through that and see what that looks like and see what we can do to try to alleviate whatever those concerns are. and get you the help, whether it's anonymous help or, professional help, inpatient, outpatient, whatever that is, and talk you through that. The last thing I'm going to do is leave you by yourself.
Last night I used an analogy that we took a drowning class in the fire department a few years ago, and the instructor explained that the victim might not even appear to be drowning at the end, because now they're exhausted, they're tired. So that last part. So from the brotherhood side of it, you're in the firehouse and they passed through. They couldn't get the strength to call for help, and now they've gone into the silent part of it.
Well, think about it from a medical standpoint. So we talk about shock, right? Well, your body compensates for shock for a period of time, but whenever it gets to the point where it can't compensate anymore, what happens? I mean, it's catastrophic, right? Just like a child that's struggling to breathe. One of the biggest things with children is respiratory issue, right? They compensate until they don't compensate, and someone who's struggling with mental health, a lot of times compensates until they don't compensate.
Having this conversation, I think the easiest, and this wasn't in my pocket that I just pulled out, just thinking of it here, and the easiest thing to suggest to somebody that you think, like, man, they've been kind of quiet, is an offer to go do something. Like you're saying, like go get the drink or go do bowling, whatever it is.
Absolutely.
Yeah, because nobody's ever been offended by being invited to go do something.
Right. Yeah. And here's the deal: sometimes people just don't have anything else at home, and what they do have is work, and that's all they have. And literally, just hey, you want let's go out and let's go fishing, or let's go whatever, do something.
Guns.
Do something
do
together,
something.
right? And sometimes that's all it takes, and you never know if that particular act was the one thing that turned things around for that person.
Fork in the road.
Yeah.
Right. You remember when Captain Bowen died in Nashville? I was in Hendersonville at the time, and I got word that that something bad had happened. Michelle was working at the hospital there in Asheville, and literally she walked in one of the patient's rooms and could see the smoke coming from the building and all that stuff. And I got word that something had happened, and that there was very possibly going to be a line of duty death. At that point in time, it had not been confirmed. And I called Scott. I said, hey man, I don't know what's going on. I said, but if you need anything, let me know. And he's like, well, it's not good. It's not good. And I'm like, okay. He said, I'll let you know. And I said, okay. Well, we got off the phone. Well, I could tell in his voice that whatever it was not good, right? And instead of sitting around waiting for him to call and tell me that they needed something, I called my city administrator. I said, look, they've got a bad situation in Asheville. And I don't know if you guys know about the geography up there, but actually city of Hendersonville is actually the next closest municipality to the city of Asheville at that time. And I told him what was going on. I said, I'm going to see what I can do to help. And he's like, no problem. Let me know if there's anything we can do as a city. I said, okay. So I went to the hospital first, and as you can imagine, that was chaos. There was way more people there than could have ever done anything they needed done. So I was like, well, I can't do anything here. I showed up. But what I can do is go back to their headquarters and see if they need anything there. So, from logistics, whatever they needed. Sure. And so I walked in headquarters there, and one of the other chiefs was there, and I obviously knew him. And I said, hey, look, I'm going to go sit right over there in that chair in the bay. And, I'm here. I don't care if you just need me to go get water, a bottle of water for somebody, whatever. I don't care. I don't care what the task is. I'm sitting right there. If you need me, I'm there. If you don't, you just let me know when you don't need me, and I'll go home. And I literally sat over there, and they literally did not need me. But I sat over for, I think it was like 3 hours or something like that. But it just that is outside of something happening to my own family, my daughter or something like that. That's my biggest fear, is that somebody in my department, or hell, obviously my friends, something happens to one of them. That is my biggest fear. It really is. That's the things that keeps me up at night, worrying about things like that. And again, just don't pass that opportunity.
Yeah, and communicate.
And communicate. I mean, literally.
See, I'm learning.
It really boils down to that. It really does.
Well, Chief, we enjoyed having you. By all means, it's been a pleasure and an honor.
Well, likewise. I hope somebody gets something out of it.
I'm sure they will.
Other than me just running my mouth.
I know one person who has.
Yeah.
Well, thank you. I'll tell you that I feel like I got as much or more out of it, because it's really neat to be here with you guys and see what you're doing. I didn't know what I was really getting into. I didn't know what to expect.
That's the fun of it.
But here's the deal. I mean, I all I knew was that you guys had invited me, and I wanted to be a part of it, whatever it was. So
Yeah, no, we're trying to do good things here.
yeah, no,
For sure.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's very commendable, and I think that you guys keep up the good work.
Nice.
Cool.
Well, Chief, thanks for coming.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Appreciate it.
All right.